So welcome to Friday morning to Speaker Idle. So obviously, turn off your cell phones, otherwise I get to answer the call. So in case you haven't been here for the last couple of days or you've never been Speaker Idle before, we're going to have our 4 victims or contestants come up on stage. They're going to give a quick 5-minute presentation to talk about whatever it is that they want to talk about, whatever they're passionate about. Once they've given their presentation, our table of fairly sober judges are going to, half of you are sober, half of you probably still aren't. And I'm not getting any arguments from the table of 4. I know, like I said, half of you are sober, because Kendra had to work this morning, and half of you aren't, because you had to talk. So they will go ahead and give feedback to the contestant, somebody's phone, and they will, on what they did wrong, what the judges really liked about the talk and what they didn't. Once the judges are done, and once all 4 of the contestants are done, we'll go ahead and pick a winner for this session. We'll also pick a runner-up for this session. The winner of this session and the 2 sessions we've already had are going to go ahead and compete this afternoon, along with one of our 3 runners-up who will also compete in the afternoon session. Now, this is where things are going to get a little interesting. This session ends at noon. That session starts at 3. So some basic math real fast, and you're going to have 3 hours to prepare. Is it 3:30? Oh, that's right, it is 3:30. This one's, so you've got the extra half hour. So that's really going to matter an awful lot for preparing yourself and being ready to go. Whoever wins this afternoon session will be declared the winner of Speaker Idle 2018, and they will get our grand prize of an opportunity to present at PASS next year, because you have a guaranteed slot. So my images are all from Microsoft Clip Art. Feel free to complain to Microsoft if you don't like them. I really don't care. Also, if you are the original creator of the graphic, feel free to sue Microsoft. I'm sure their lawyers will be more than happy to play with you for a few weeks. So, like I said, the prize for the winner this afternoon is going to be a presentation at a breakout session for the 2019 PASS Summit. With that, obviously, you're going to get the 12 months to prepare your session and panic about what you're going to present about. And, of course, bragging rights that you did eliminate 11 of your best friends from this competition. So our wonderful judges today, who were kind enough to get up at the butt crack of dawn and come talk to us, are Mark Sims, Joey Diatoni, Kendra Little, and Alan Hurt, whose name I even spelt correctly this time.
By the way, I had to be up at the butt crack of dawn because of this stupid judging thing.
Yeah,
that's why I had to do the 8 a.m. session. Kendra did it voluntarily.
So Joey's session was supposed to be at a lovely, convenient 11:15 this morning, but he had to reschedule his session to even earlier in the day so he could be here to talk to our contestants. So our 4 speakers for this presentation are Randolph West, Peter Shore, James Donahue, and Rob Volk. And that's the order you're going to see them in. So let's go ahead and get started with Mr. Randolph West. If you come on up here. So, like several of our contestants, Randolph is a Microsoft MVP for Microsoft Data Platform. He's one of the authors of the SQL Server 2017 Administration Inside Out book. He's an actor on the stage and screen, and he's done voiceovers for independent video games as well. There you go.
Good morning. Thank you for enjoying your PASS Summit. I'm very pleased to see you back. Nkosi Sana in R&D is having a problem getting the scheduled jobs on SQL Server running this morning, and she's been here the entire weekend. Can you please check it out? And the other thing is, she also mentioned that every time SQL Server crashes, it happens a lot lately, she needs you to have a look at that. And like every one of your colleagues, you must know Configuration Manager, right? Yeah, awesome. Plot twist. You get to Nkosi Sana's computer, and it is not running Windows. And in fact, Nkosi Sana is one of the leading Linux developers in the country, and good luck. What do you do? What do you do?
Call you.
Today, I'm going to tell you how to use MS SQL Conf, which is the equivalent of Configuration Manager for Linux. These are just a few tips and tricks because we do not have a lot of time, but I'm going to go through a couple of them with you, and we're going to fix Nkosasana's problem at the same time. So, what is MS SQL Conf? Like most Linux command line tools, it is a Python script that happens to be replacement of a configuration manager for Linux, because obviously we can't have that whole UI incident because it has to be compatible for a number of different distributions. And it writes to a text file, because the thing about SQL Server on Linux is that it is like any other application that runs on Linux. It reads its settings from a file. And the great thing about MS SQL Conf is that it is an instance level configuration. And that means you can manage the entire instance and not at a database level, because that you would do inside SQL Server itself. So how it works is it's a command line operation. So you have the command, then you have one or more settings and one or more variables that go into that setting. So it's usually one setting and one value, but it might be more, and we'll see that as we go through this. It requires super user permissions. Now, how many of you have ever used Linux before? I am very pleased to see a lot of people. That is most of the room. Thank you very much, about 80%. Sudo, sudo, means super user do. If you ask your computer to make you a sandwich, it's going to laugh at you. But if you sudo, make me a sandwich, it's going to make you a sandwich. I've made a little note at the bottom here that Docker containers, which the ones that Microsoft releases for SQL Server, are already running as root, which is the administrator user, so you don't have to use the sudo or sudo command when you issue some of these commands. So where do I find MS SQL Conf? Well, this is quite simple. Don't you love it when people say that? It's simple because I know how to do this. We have the binary at the top there, and I'm going to show you on that side as well. Thank you, that side of the room. The top one is the command that we run. And with all Linux commands, it is good to have the entire path, because sometimes it doesn't know exactly where the executable is. And if you just type the file name, it sometimes just tries to open it as a file instead of executing it. And then the second option there is where the text file is stored. So the way that Linux file systems work is that the binaries are stored in one place and the configuration files are stored somewhere else. Sounds like another operating system I've used in the past. Remember to restart your computer. No, restart SQL Server. In Linux, just like with Windows, you've got the system controls, the service controls, and just like that, you've got sudo system control restart Microsoft SQL Server. Easy as pie. So now we're going to go with an example. The original problem was that Nkosasana is not getting SQL agent running properly. So how do we solve that? Sudo, to execute this as a super user, there's the command, mssql-conf, and now we're going to set a value to true. And in this case, the value is SQL agent.enabled. That is how you enable the SQL agent on SQL Server on Linux. And this works on Docker as well as native Linux as well. This one's an interesting one because on Linux, it has a much more aggressive policy for applications that are consuming too much memory. So if it gets near the limits of the physical memory available, Linux will just kill the process. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter how special you think it should be. So what we have to do on Linux, and not so much Windows, is to set the physical memory allocation lower so that SQL Server only ever thinks it has a certain number of amount of memory. So in this case, on a 4 gig RAM system, we would set it to 80% of that, which is the recommendation of Microsoft, to 3328 megabytes in this case. And then finally, Nkosasana does not want to see all the success messages of her backups in the error log, because it's an error log. And also, she's dealing with table partitioning, and she wants to get the statistics working properly. So there's 2 trace flags in that example. This demonstrates that you can set 2 or more trace flags if you need them, or just the one. Now, because it's an INI file, you want to make sure that you can check it out and make sure everything's correct before you restart. You can use the cat command, which stands for concatenate. I thought for 41 and a half years it meant catalog. Turns out I was wrong. So now you know, concatenate. And it's sudo because it's a system file. You cannot access it without system administrator rights, and then the location of the file. I've got a screen capture on the right there, which I did in Notepad++ so that you could see the little section headings and so on, but it's just a text file. Remember to restart SQL. On Linux, you can just issue the restart command on system control, and then on Docker containers, you would be better off just restarting the Docker container itself. It's much easier. Who wants to see it? We don't have much time, I know that, and I'm not tracking my time because I forgot to press the start button. So, I'm a pro. Here we have a terminal command that shows me accessing an interactive shell into the Docker container because I don't have Linux on my MacBook. And so what I'm going to do is issue the command and then type in my password, and I'm in. Hackers was never this exciting. And then I'm just going to run the cat command. Now remember, because I said it's a Docker container, it's already running in root. And if you have a look there on the side there, and on the side there, you'll notice that it's got a hash sign instead of the $sign, which means that I am a super user. So I'm just going to tell it to concatenate the file that I'm asking for, and you'll see there, SQL agent is enabled, the memory limit has been set, and the 2 trace flags have been set. Cool. Now we have to restart the Docker container, which is a simple, he said simple again. Restart. Docker container restarted. Now we can go back into Azure Data Studio, and we can run some commands against this database to see that everything was set. So firstly, I'm going to run a version. Oh, it didn't work. Why didn't it work? Because I restarted it. CTP 2.1 of 2019. How many of you folks are using that yet? I'm pleased to see at least 3. Then we're going to show you that physical memory thing that I showed you, SQL only thinks that there's 3.3 gigs of space, physical memory on this machine. And just to show you that doesn't affect max server memory, I'm going to show you the configuration still thinks that there are 2.1 petabytes available to play with. This is where to find out more information about this product, this tool, and this is how to get hold of me. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm starting today. So you went over by a lot.
Yep.
Like 3.5 minutes a lot.
Yeah.
So you got to really watch that.
Yep.
So knowing a bit about SQL Server on Linux, sometimes we can be pedantic up here about a few things.
No.
Sometimes.
Alan,
would
I
never
expect
happen.
nothing less.
Yeah, exactly, right. Like I would have called out, for example, that that's one way to edit the mssql.com file. You can technically use VI or your Emacs or your favorite editor as well. Emacs.
Nano.
That's why I'm in the middle.
It's Nano. It's not VI or Emacs.
Yeah, there you go. third to the party. The other thing that I would have also called out there, for example, you mentioned Docker a couple times. Not
Yes.
everybody knows what Docker is. We know what it is. It's like a variant, but you might just say you have like full-blown regular Linux, and Docker is just sort of a different thing, right? Use the restart slide twice.
I did, yes. It was a refresher to say you need to restart.
Right, but sometimes I guess the way I would have handled it, knowing what I know about SQL Server on Linux, is it prompts you when, like, if you're using MS SQL Conf, it'll say you need to restart, you know, and that way you might not have said it twice. So it's like if you get the prompt, then just restart SQL Server. But I did like you had really good stage presence. You even though you went over you really sort of had an even pace. I like the call effect. I mean, it was a good topic. I think you just need to edit it down a little bit to make it fit in the 5 minutes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for speaking at Speaker Idol. And I really wish I'd seen this before I was struggling with Docker last night in my hotel room. That would have been really helpful. But that's not your fault. That's not your fault at all. I really liked the innovation you had with the slides before the title slide and the way you led into the story. I've never thought of doing that before, and it worked. It got it. At first, I was like, oh, there's no title slide. But then I got transported into the story, and it just worked. And then we got to the title slide, and I'm like, oh, it's a little bit of a surprise. I get it, and I like it, and I was down with that. I thought that was really cool. I would stop with the laser pointer. And
Yeah.
I have been a laser pointer person, but the other day I attended a speaking tips, and Catherine Williamson pointed out that when you use it, you have to, it's really, you turn your back to the audience. You're turning your back to someone, which you're better off using more of a build slide, like gray the text out and then go to the next slide, where using some other method that makes you not have to turn away, especially when you've got such a short timeline. So I would do that. I would also just maybe pare it down and do all demo and say, hey, I've got a great reference for you, instead of covering the commands in the slides. And I think that's one way to help save on the time, is either do all slides and no demo, or all demo and no slides, so that you aren't having to show the code in both of them, which takes up extra time. As long as I've got some place to go after to have a reference for these commands, like a link, I'm happy to do that at the end. Great talk. Thanks for doing Speaker Idol.
Hang on, I need to run a command so I can be more pedantic.
While he's being pedantic, I'll be pedantic too. Just a couple things to watch out for. Windows is fairly uniform. The Linux ecosystem is not. Several of your commands will only work on Debian-derived distributions. If you try some of the systemctl stuff, say on CentOS, you may get fascinatingly different results.
Technically, CentOS isn't supported.
CentOS isn't supported, but Red Hat is. So if you've got money.
Yeah. Oh, because customers always do things that are fully supported and never call us and complain. Never.
New levels.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
But
But
it is Friday. I mean,
yes. The thing to watch out for is the narrative was framed up as there was a problem, and then poof, magic happened, and somehow we magically knew what the fix was without actually saying it.
Okay.
So if I'm coming at that problem, the first thing is, well, what do I need to do? So even just either saying, hey, we looked in a log file, we saw that SQL agent wasn't running, even doing that as a screenshot will help keep the narrative flow consistent, as opposed to, well, I saw step A and I stopped step C, but what did I do in the middle?
Joey, what's your question? Because I can answer it.
He was right. He was right on the file permissions. Just
I just thought it was weird we did that.
yeah, there you go. Okay. Okay. I liked your slides. Your pacing was really good, except that it was way too slow. So basically, you had too much content because like your pacing as a speaker was fantastic. Sims and I were being super pedantic about Linux comments by default, and I just read this in Bob Ward's book, and I didn't know it until Monday. SQL Server only ever allocates 80% of memory on Linux to avoid out-of-memory conditions.
Today I learned.
Yeah. Yeah, that was when Bob tweeted, I learned something from his book. That was it. Overall, good job. You were just way over. That's really the main problem.
Because I wasn't timing, yeah.
There's also, sorry, be more pedantic.
Please.
One thing I would have mentioned too, the SQL Server agent thing is actually, I think it's CU4 or CU5 or later. If you're running an earlier version, you have to download MS SQL agent.
This is 2019 demo, though. So
Right, but
right.
when you showed the demo, I would have said in 2017 it was.
Yeah, previous, yeah.
Yeah.
That is super pedantic, and I appreciate it.
I feel very sorry for the 4 lucky people who get to present this afternoon.
But you really, really, it was good. We love the pacing. Just if for 5 minutes, just pare it down a little more.
Cool.
You gave us a chance to talk about Linux.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So our next presenter is Peter Shore. So Peter is an intentionally accidental DBA. 20 years of working as a SQL Server database administrator later. He's still doing it, so God help him. He's still one of us. His background is in network and server administration, so he does have a fairly wide variety of things that he does know. He's currently president of the CBus Pass user group. He's a co-organizer for SQL Saturday Columbus.
Good morning. Simple pains, a query result to Excel story. So earlier this year, I had a client who made a request, simple request on the surface, extract some data and import it to import to SharePoint so that we can retain some data from an application we're retiring. They want it delivered via Excel. They provided a great ERD for the database, and we eventually figured out what the column list was. Sounds simple. I wrote a query. Clearly, this is not the actual data. It is a stand-in for the moment because I can't show you client data, right? Looks normal in this screenshot from Management Studio. Whether I did a CSV export, a copy and paste, and even after I solved the problem of commas in the free-form field, the notes field is the problem here. By exporting to a tab-delimited file, still had this problem. If you notice, the gray highlighted area, we've got some spillover in the rows. I want that all to be in the one column. I beat my head against this for a while, trying to figure out what the heck was going on. So I walked through a few steps. I cleared the formatting by copying from Management Studio into Notepad so that I had the clean, unformatted thing. So a classic copy, paste, back into Excel, no dice. Paste the same single cell that has a problem into Word, turn on the non-printing characters. I don't see anything that is out of line at this point. Still no dice. I finally opened the file, saved that one cell via Notepad in a hex editor, or as a text file, and opened it in a hex editor. I later found out that I could have done this process in Notepad++ and saved myself some pain, but it is what it is. The sample screenshot you see there is just to kind of give you a visual reference to the hex editor. It's not the actual file we're looking at. The hex value is the encoded side. The decoded side is the readable text. Shows the ASCII files that are all, or the ASCII characters that are all numeric, plain text, or non-printing characters. What it turned out to be was the CRLF down there at the bottom. Carriage returns and line feeds. For those of you who are in the room that are not old enough to have ever seen an actual typewriter, this is the screen version, or the IT version of take and slam the carriage back to their side, and the page comes up. 2 sets of ASCII characters, because it could be displayed in decimal or hex. Yes, I had both. I don't understand how this application managed to get both in the result set in the database, but it did. And I suspect that because once I did the replace function, you can see the generic replace function at the top, and my final fix in quotes, which was a series of replaces because of the way the query ran. That's how I finally got it to work. I still had a few rows that had a problem, but the reality of the situation was, at that point, it was going to take me more time to figure out the problem than it was going to be to just manually fix them in the spreadsheet. Now, you may be wondering, great, it's your client data, what's this apply to me? At some point, if you're a DBA, you're going to open a ticket with a vendor. This also would apply to other various ETL operations potentially. And the vendor's going to say, hey, give me the queries. And when you go to export the SQL text, you're going to first have the comma problem, which you can solve via the saving as a tab-delimited file before the endpoint. But depending on the formatting of that text, you're likely to run into the query or the carriage return line feed problem. In fact, I ran into it earlier this week for this very reason, working with another client that needed a query to go back to a vendor on the to look at why a particular piece of software was slow. Never mind that there's a JDBC connection in the middle that's the actual problem that they're not going to fix. And with that, I'd like to say thank you. You can find me on Twitter and email me if you need to, and have a great day.
Thank you very much.
That must have been an exciting.
Judges.
Thanks for walking us through that. Good to see the story and the flow. Couple things on the slides. No points for white space, so don't be afraid to kind of make the fonts a little bigger and take over the white space, especially if you're not going to do a transition slide. I'm glad to always hear folks come up and say, yeah, I brute forced it and it was fine because it was a one-off. If you'd basically written an automation script to do all of that with Notepad, I probably would have run out screaming. Only other minor point on the slides, just if you're going to show code, T-SQL, whatever, just show it formatted.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice pacing, nice timing. I thought pretty much what Mark said. I thought that was a good example of where you can do brute force on a one-off. And my other question was, did you try Azure Data Studio?
No, but only because I needed to do it without having to buy anything. I didn't have the tool available to me.
Okay, cool.
All right. Thank you for presenting at Speaker Idol. 5 minutes is hard, and you got in under your 5 minutes, but it was really close. Good use of time. And like Joey, I enjoyed your pacing. You're easy to listen to in a good way.
Thank you.
Couple little notes. I know what a hex editor is now, but I didn't always. And you did eventually talk about what a hex editor is. I think it would help when you first introduce the concept to say, then I use this tool. Here's a little bit about what this tool is. Also helping draw my attention, I never figured out where the CRLF was on the screen. So
okay.
highlighting it in some way or zooming in maybe on the next slide some way, because I was like squinting and looking like there's a lot of stuff in that.
And show the actual file.
Yeah, it wasn't. You said it wasn't the actual file?
Right.
Just show the actual file there.
Well, it would have text on the right that was the actual file, but something with a
Yeah,
CRLF
it wasn't
in
the actual. I used one that was a little more crowded to show the differentiation between those two sides.
Okay. Yeah, but I was sort of lost looking at the
Okay.
slide, and then it's hard to listen because I'm looking for something like you get it. The brief story at the end about the vendor didn't work for me because it was kind of rushed, like, and then it turned, there's a JDBC something, and I'm like, what is it related to? You just cut that out. But thank you so much for speaking. Great job.
Thank you.
Again, good job. I would agree with everybody else that the pacing was good. You know, it came in on time. I did like where you did mention on the hex editor slide where you say I could have opened it in Notepad++ and saved myself some pain. Like, so it's sort of offering people an alternate way to say, you know, I did it this way, but I learned after I could have made it a little bit easier on myself. So instead of just sort of, like, you'd already made the slide, you'd already sort of committed to that, but saying there is a better way. Mm-hmm. So I did like that. I also had the same thing as Kendra, where when you mentioned the, you know, CRLF, I was like, where is it? And then so I started kind of hunting for it. Mm-hmm. So just sort of make it really obvious for folks. But,
Okay.
but overall, really good job.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So our next contestant is going to be Jim Donahue. So we'll do our magic swap over here on the side. So Jim is a cloud solution architect. He began working with SQL Server to document his video game collection back in the day and became an accidental DBA out of it. He loves working with Azure and utilizing all the various new technologies that are available to better assist his various clients that he works with. He's a former U.S. Marine, so thank you very much for that. Back from 99 through 05, and continues to stay active in his local VLF and assisting. Sorry, VFW. Sorry. Hey, I was up until 2:30 in the morning, and you know, yeah, whatever. And assisting other veterans throughout the country. And of course, you put your laptop right in front of the switch box.
Of course, Shift F5 won't work right now, but that's okay. Awesome. Okay. Let me get my timer started. Good morning, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for being here at Summit 2018. This is actually my second time presenting at Speaker Idol. Last time I did not have a timer, and I spoke to you wonderful people for almost 10 minutes. So we're going to keep it down this time, okay? I love working with Azure, like Denny said. This session is for creating a high available disaster recovery and Azure SQL database in less than 5 minutes, because it's a lightning talk, so I got to show you to you in 5 minutes, right? Now I have HADR, but most of you should know HADR, high availability, and disaster recovery. But as Denny also said, I love retro video games, right? As you can see, I have Nintendo shirts on throughout the week. I have my Nintendo colored shorts, my Nintendo colored flip-flops on today. This is my basement, okay? At one point in time, I had the entire North American NES collection, okay? Except stadium events, because my wife would not let me have it. It was $5,000. We decided a house is better than a video game. But you're probably wondering, like, okay, Jim, so we're gonna play Nintendo, but why are we looking at the pictures of your basement? Well, as Denny said, one of the best things I had when I was growing up to be a DBA is I had to build a database to actually learn how to work with SQL Server. So this was my first database right here. This is the actual schema. So this is the full collection of Nintendo as of right now, besides Switch, because Switch is still an ever-growing library, okay? So with that, this database is a whopping 9 meg. It's allocated 16 meg. It can grow to 500 meg, so I have plenty of room for expansion for new Nintendo consoles. I can't wait, right? So let's talk a little bit about Azure Database Geo-Replication. Anybody here using Azure DB right now? Put your hands up. Okay, about a quarter of the room, awesome. How many of you have heard of Azure Database Geo-Replication? Awesome, almost the entire room, that's great. How many of you heard of Always On? Okay, we're great here. You guys should just leave your hands up, right? We're having a big party. Okay, so if you're familiar with Always On, you're pretty familiar with Azure Database Replication, right? Geo-replication. So it's usually an asynchronous commit to go from one region to another. Cross-region redundancy, like I said, one region to another. Application can access a secondary database read-only, right? How many of you can do a read-only database quick, right? Replicate a read-only database under 5 minutes? Okay, cool. A couple of you. If you want more info, there's more info down here in the slide in that link. Failover groups are something pretty new. They just came out of preview several months ago. Anybody know what a failover group is in Azure DB? Awesome. It's like your always-on listener, right? That's how I always think of it. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but I always think of it as my listener. And for the purpose of this demonstration, we won't deep dive into it. Alan's making his face. So you can have one or many failover groups per logical Azure DB instance, okay? You can have multiple databases inside of one failover group. For our purpose today, we're going to put one Nintendo database into a failover group. And again, there's more information here on that link. Now, since I'm a little nervous, I wasn't going to do a live demo because I don't trust the Wi-Fi at the convention center with everybody being on Twitter, Netflix, and everything else. So I pre-recorded this. So you'll see I'm on my logical instance right now, flippity-floppity. I'm going to select my Nintendo database here. Once I'm on my Nintendo database, I go to Geo-Replication. And you can see here, there's a small pink section there. That means I have a server in the central location. So I choose Central US. I'm verifying my location of where I'm placing my data. It's a readable secondary. I'm targeting a central instance. I don't want an elastic pool. And it's going to be a basic tier. With Azure Geo-Replication, your database can be the same tier or higher. You cannot go lower because Microsoft wants your money. So, as you can see, it shipped my data. My line is now solid. So I now have a replicated database between East US 2 and Central, right? So now, if Hurricane Florence would come along, how many of you had heard of Hurricane Florence? right? Did any of you get that lovely email when it was coming up the Eastern Seaboard from Microsoft saying, hurry up and get your data out because we don't know where it's coming? Right? This solution will work perfect for you if you're using Azure DB. And I'm getting short on time. Here's our failover group demo. Again, we're doing this real quick here. I go to failover groups. We're going to add a failover group. It's going to be called flops failover because I don't type during demos. Secondary server, we're going to choose the central server we have spun up in Flippity. It's called Floppity Flippity. Like I said, we're not going to deep dive into those. And we're going to choose Nintendo. We're going to hit select here once the pricing information comes up. We hit create. And there it is, right? Now, I had to speed these videos up a little bit because the times will vary depending on, one, the size of your databases, and two, I only had 5 minutes, which I'm over right now. So thank you guys very much for your time. I really appreciate you guys coming out to Summit. Thanks so much. All right, Alan, let me have it.
Alan, go for it.
You already know what I'm going to ding you for, right?
I did put the space between always and on, didn't I?
It's not the feature name.
So I pulled these directly from that link.
Always on availability. Some of the links.
Okay, I'm just saying, I pulled those directly from that
Do
link.
your homework before you
I'm sorry.
put in the slide.
Yeah, that link, if you go to that link, that's exactly what that link
Another
has
link I
specified.
now need to fix on the Microsoft.
I'm sorry, but no, I'm apologizing to Alan because I chose this session.
Yeah, fine,
if you
great.
go to that
All right.
link, those are directly from that page.
All right.
So,
All right. Anyway, so yes, you were over. The thing you kept doing, which really kind of didn't matter, is that whether you are a second-time speaker or third, whatever you've been here, just go right into your talk.
okay.
And then you kind of reminded people all the time you've got 5 minutes. You wasted a lot of time actually reminding people you had 5 minutes, so you went over your 5 minutes. Just talk.
Okay.
Recording videos is hard, and one of the reasons I generally don't do it is because you have to talk to it and hit the marks right when you do it. And then when you got a little off, you started to, so be careful with recorded videos. And that, again, I know it's hard because you have 5 minutes, and when you're doing demos, it's do I do a live demo? Do I record something? So maybe when you hit something, maybe like pause while you're talking to it, like if you think you're going to go over a couple seconds, and then just kind of restart it, just so everything's in sync and you don't kind of be like, oh, I got to catch up because it moved on without me and I was still hanging on something. On this slide, which I had the wrong terminology, you had a lot of words. Generally, when you think of the way, like when you're looking at a slide, you don't want people to read that much. You want to be the focus point. So you want to fill in that information, try and simplify up those words to less, whatever that is. You had, in some cases, 3 or 4 lines of text for each bullet point. But I like the story that you had about, showing your basement and then, taking it and then making it available. So I think the story was good. I think you just need to tighten it up a little bit.
Thanks for speaking at Speaker Idol. I have one note here that I made, which was fantastic taunting of Alan. That was really good. I actually thought you were doing it on purpose, and I was like, yeah. So maybe just go with that and say it was on purpose. I loved the personal photos. I agree with about simplifying the slides a lot, because I was kind of like, oh, what's going on there? I don't know who to look at. I think maybe to make the recordings work, because it is an interesting technique, and you were much smoother on the first one. Maybe get rid of a lot of the slides. To make this a 5-minute talk where you've got kind of time to relax in and chat a little bit, get rid of a lot of the slides, just do real big picture concepts with like a couple of words, and then break the videos up more so that the pauses are kind of built in like a short segment, so you can, and then you can say, and here's what you just saw there. By the way, now we're up to 30 seconds. Next video, okay, I'm gonna talk a little bit, and now here's, that way you don't have to like narrate exact time as it goes through. Maybe something like that could help, because it did get awkward on the second one, but I agree, more and more doing live cloud demos, there's real trade-offs, and having a good video technique of doing it and getting it really tuned is a worthwhile technique to have. You were much closer on the first video than the second one too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. What Alan and Kendra said, I mostly agree with. I thought your intro was good. I thought your pacing was good. I had a few technical quibbles, however, and they're not as pedantic as Alan's, but they're kind of pedantic. High availability is implied in Azure SQL Database, so you were only talking about disaster recovery. Also, it's not really always on availability group technology. You want to say either is similar or analogous, because it's not. You
Again,
got it from a Microsoft
This was
doc.
the direct words from that site. So
I'm actually going to GitHub now and fixing it.
so then at 3 o'clock I will have the newly updated verbiage.
Also, another thing you mentioned about readable secondary, you can do readable secondary on the premium service tier without georeplication.
Okay.
So you can just pass in read-only and it will connect to the secondary. The pink circle isn't necessarily where you have a server, it's where you have a paired region with that region.
Okay.
And also, your database has to be the same tier, but it does not have to be the same performance level. You didn't miss that, you kind of nailed that, but like I just say, it doesn't have to be the same performance level, so you can save some money by doing that with your DR if you choose. Other than that, I thought you were good. The timing thing was, I think like Alan said, you kind of just wasted a lot of time. I think you could have done that talk in 5 minutes if you condensed it a little more.
Fantastic job on repeating to the room the visuals from the polls so that it shows up in any recording or if anybody was watching online. Great job on that. I think folks covered on the difference between a reading slide and a talking slide. You had some great reading slides that would have been fantastic for training or offline, but really just kind of distill it down so that people are listening and the words are just an anchor point. Thank you for making it personal. It's always great to kind of get when folks open up like that. Very small one. If you're going to have a link, sometimes conferences like this one, PDF the slides so the link may disappear, so just print it out.
Okay.
Or the other thing is into that, make a short URL that's easily readable. Like yesterday, I had 4 book links in my Kubernetes session, and I just made them. I made Bitly links for all of them, and I made them like a word that would make sense to the book.
I actually thought about doing that, but then I thought I'd be dinged for not having the actual URL specified.
Oh, but as long as I can type it and get somewhere.
Okay.
I mean, we're bad, but we're not that bad.
I thought if it didn't, I thought if it didn't,
I'm not that bad, but he is.
I thought if it didn't have the exact site, I didn't want to be dinged for that. So.
Yeah. No, don't worry about that one. And best database name ever. So. Flippity floppity.
Oh,
sorry,
the server was flippity floppity, and then I had the secondaries floppity flippity.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the applause. So our final contestant for this year is going to be Rob Volk. So as Rob comes up here, he's got props. Rob is a Microsoft Certified IT Pro and a Microsoft Certified Solutions Associate. He's been a SQL Server DBA since SQL Server 6.5 and even older. So am I in your way? You're good? No. Okay. He's one of the organizers for the SQL Saturday down in Atlanta, Georgia. He's a semi-regular blogger on SQL Team. He's put out several blogs about Speaker Idle and previous experiences in that, so thank you very much for doing that. He likes to do absolutely deranged things to SQL Server, and we've seen that several times in several sessions he's done over the years. And God help me if I've ever actually used those in real life. So thanks for doing those. And he does a lot of these things to SQL Server so the rest of us don't have to.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending Speaker Idle 2018 at PASS Summit. So of the 45 or so, 50 people in the audience, how many of you are DBAs, approximately? Almost all of you, about 30, at least 30. And of those, how many of you are junior DBAs, less than 5 years of experience? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Eric, put your hand down. Okay. So one of the things that, for the junior DBAs that might be in the audience, the 2 or 3 of you, is you've probably heard stories about what being a database administrator entails. You might have heard some cliched, stereotypical descriptions of what a DBA is, the attitude and the philosophy of it. And I'm here to tell you to not worry about this, because it's all true. At some point, if you continue being a DBA, you will become one or more of these descriptions. Or like myself, coinciding with the 20th past summit is my 20th year as a SQL Server user, you may become all of these DBAs. Nothing to worry about. It has its own sense of, there's a sequence to the events you go through, the experiences you have. It's a very universal job. You'll find the more DBAs you talk to, they've all had pretty much the same experience you've had over the years. And what I thought I'd do is to kind of go through a few details on the experiences that I've had from when I started back in 1998 using SQL Server. And as I've grown into the DBA standing before you, don't emulate what I'm doing, just, try to keep up with it and all that. I thought I'd share some of these experiences in a somewhat more entertaining form than just reciting them on a slide, if the volume ever gets up. It's only through the projector. There you go. I am the very model of a SQL Server DBA. I store my databases on a level 0 RAID array consisting of some SSDs I got to sponsor giveaways at user groups and seminars and several SQL Saturdays. I've indexed every column in my SharePoint content database. I'm undisputed master of the maintenance plan interface. I prefix store procedures with the standard SP underscore. I keep page life expectancy at 5 and not a minute more. A snapshot is really all the backup you would ever need. I back up to disk equals null in order to gain extra speed. I slavishly apply all the advice I get from DTA. I am the very model of a SQL Server DBA. Developers will tell me I'm a Luddite and a bit cuckoo. There's nothing wrong with UDFs embedded in a nested view. Containing joins from table 1 all down through table 32, their query plans are mated with Cthulhu and Medusa. Ew. I came in second place for Egggate's DBA Exceptional. You'd think they'd listen to me, but instead they tell me go to hell. My junior DBAs all think I got a screw loose in my head. For every database they shrink, Paul Randall kills a kitten dead. There's no constraints, no indexes, no sense of data purity, and everyone's a sysadmin. There's nothing like security. I can't convince these idiots they should no longer use SA. I am the very model of a SQL Server DBA. My clients' tables glorify first normal form and elegance and serve for both OLTP and all business intelligence. They manage this astounding feat, though not particularly well, by storing JSON data in a column typed as XML. Why do they think that suddenly I'd be all nice and motherly? They hate it when they can't set empty beautiful recovery. Their use of cursors will make you suspect their genealogy. The no-lock hint encompasses their tuning methodology. Some folks I talk to every day should get hit with a baseball bat. Instead, I charge them twice as much while wearing my consultant's hat. My antiquated tendencies will cause my clients great dismay. I am the very model of a SQL Server DBA. Thank you. All right.
So I'm pretty sure that was the first innovation we've ever had at Speaker Idol.
Wow, that's really going to go to my head. You're going to ruin it for me later if I make it to the final.
Joey.
Whew.
Wow.
Mark.
I got nothing.
Kendra.
Yeah.
Alan, your turn.
I don't think we've ever seen anything like that in Speaker Idol, ever.
Or any other session.
No.
Wow.
Definitely brave to do that. That was great. That was great.
Hey, Sims and I are saying we don't need to deliberate the winner. Do you guys agree with that?
I think the room agrees with it.
No feedback?
Congratulations, Rob. We're going to go outside to figure out who's in the final besides you, but you won. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well done.
So you're saying you liked it, right?
Rob,
Okay.
I do have feedback, and it's all positive.
Please.
The code samples you had in your examples were amazing. Like, you were like, the cursor example was like, yeah. The cursor example was horrible, and it was so horrible, and it drew my attention. It's like, oh, he's doing a select star from the largest table in IndividualWorks in a cursor. Yay.
That's not the worst cursor in my current code base. Oh, that was a real execution plan in my code base.
I can believe
You've
that.
seen those? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So,
It looked absolutely horrible and real.
sorry for making you think it was better in the beginning. Yeah.
It just got more real.
Yeah.
Cool, yeah.
All right,
Go
thank
away. Thank you, Rob.
Oh, where's my?
It's just orange juice, I swear. That's my story, and I'm goddamn well sticking to it. It's insane. I have notes. Oh wait. These are for later today. They're for the next session. So who in the room is a presenter today? Today, who's done a session somewhere? Just a few people. Oh, okay, maybe half the room are unscared people. Giving these 5-minute talks, either here or at the lightning talks that we do here at PASS or at SQL Saturday, they're definitely some of the hardest talks you will ever see, simply because they're the hardest thing to give. I think yesterday, I think Kendra was talking about one of the presenters being able to do a story arc in the session, and you definitely do have to do that as you give a talk at a session. And it's really hard to get that whole arc in a 5-minute window, just because it's 5 goddamn minutes. You just don't have a whole lot of time to really do a whole heck of a lot. It's a lot easier to get that kind of arc and that story told in a longer presentation. So I think doing these is a horrible, horrible thing we have to do to people. But fortunately, I don't have to give them anymore. I just get to stand up here and talk, and they have to give them. So it's a little more entertaining for me. So I think the contestants that have all had to do this have done an absolutely fantastic job, especially the 2 people who found out at this session that they're going to be talking in the next session in 3.5 hours. Are going to do an absolutely amazing job because they only have the 3 hours to actually get ready and prepare for that session. So I think that'll be very, very interesting to see what they actually put together. And they're taking an awful long time out there, considering they only have to come up with one decision. So actually, we already know who the next winner is, of this session. Why did you guys come down to Speaker Idol? So I want to kind of flip this back on you a little bit and find out what you guys were expecting, since about half the room was speakers and half wasn't. Why did you guys come down to see Speaker Idol down in the depths of the TCC? You heard Rob was going to sing? Well, at least somebody knew in advance. Yeah, I'm with you. I can't talk for 5 minutes and shut up either, because I've tried to do it once. I was semi-successful, and
We're judging, not trying to talk for only 5 minutes.
Yeah. Although I am doing lightning talk later, so that's interesting.
all
I
right.
don't
So
know if I can say anything.
we already know the winner of this session. So you
Yeah.
guys owe us a runner-up for
All
this
right, so
session,
the runner-up
and
for
then
this session is Peter. So congratulations, Peter.
Awesome. And then of our various runners-up we've had over 3 days, who will be presenting in 3.5 hours?
So we're doing a little audible. in a
Okay.
way.
You're the judges. You're allowed.
Yes, we are. So we are choosing 2 people. So we'll have 5 people in the.
I'll
the
have to
round.
update my slides, but okay.
Yeah. So the 2 people who will be competing at 3:30, in addition to the winners, are Dennis and Paresh.
All right. So congratulations.
That'd be a killer final round.
Yep.
We will see you at 3:30 on Friday, or 3:30 later today, back here in this godforsaken room in the depths of hell. So thank you all very much for coming. So you do only have 3 hours to present or to prepare. So hopefully it's entertaining. So go now, go fast, and do your presentations. We'll see you in 3 hours. Don't forget to check out everything else Pass has to offer. Thank you all very much for coming.